Good afternoon, everyone. We hope you guys all enjoyed that great lunch, and we are honored to be here today to share with you our presentation, Making Strides in Data Strategy, how Team USA has empowered an organization-wide data culture. We are also super excited because today officially marks 99 days until the start of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. There we go. Thank you. I don't know about y'all, but I'm super excited to cheer Team USA on the biggest sports stage in Paris this summer. My name is Jessica Hensley. I'm the Associate Director of Strategic Insights at the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee.
And my name is Maggie Barnes. I use Magdalene for presentations because it looks a bit more fancy, but I am Manager of Business Intelligence at the USOPC. And today we're really excited to take you on a piece of our journey on how we became a better and more informed organization. Now, while we have an entire enterprise data strategy built out, what we're going to focus in on today is our data culture, as we believe that by having a strong data culture, we set ourselves up for success to meet all of our other strategic data objectives.
So let's set the scene. It's 5 years ago. You might say, well, why 5 years? To be truthful, that's when I started at the USOPC. So we also wanted to highlight how much progress can be made at a pretty relatively small organization in not that big of an amount of time. So it's 2019. What does our data ecosystem look like at the USOPC? Well, we have data. We have a lot of it, actually. We have 7 main source systems of data. Not surprising, we have things like a financial database, as every organization does. We have a very large and very important to us competition results database. We receive results from a contracted company on every elite Olympics level competition all year long, not just games years, not just from the games. We're getting World Cup, World Championships, and it's for over 100 different sports, events, disciplines, and it's on all athletes, not just USA. We're receiving every country's athletes' competition results. So, as you can imagine, a very large data set and one that's very important for us. We have a donor database. I'm not sure how many of you guys know, but the USOPC is actually one of the only Olympic and Paralympic committees in the world to be not government funded. We are fully sponsor and donor funded. So for the health of our organization, this is also a very important database for us. Then we have things like an athlete CRM, an EMR system, electronic medical records, obviously kept under lock and key. We operate and maintain 2 training facilities. So we have an Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where Maggie and I currently reside, and one in Lake Placid, New York. With these training centers, we capture a lot of data. We want to know who was staying, who was training, who stayed at the resident dorms that we have on campus, how many meals they were eating. We actually have resident training programs as well, where athletes will live, reside, train full-time on our training facilities. And then we have things like camps and community events that are utilizing these centers as well. And lastly, sending a team and getting them on the ground at an Olympic Games is no easy feat. We have to send thousands of people. You have to think it's not just the 600 plus athletes that we send to a summer games. Along with those 600 athletes, we have hundreds, I should say, of coaches, of doctors and medical staff, the physiotherapists, the physical therapists, everything along those lines. We have media. We've got to have people covering the games over there in Paris. And with sending and putting a team on the ground, there is a lot of logistical data that comes along with that. We have the flights, the hotels, the transportation, the fun credentials that always makes the news. And the games aren't even the only event we put on. So we have this type information, logistical data, on a lot of different events year-round. So some of that data is going into SQL Server. Some of it is not. We have a data warehouse that we fondly and lovingly named the Bob schema. This is because it was this amazing guy named Bob. He had worked there forever, and he built the entire thing out by hand. Did it follow best practices and scalability of current day? No. Did it get the job done and get us access to data to start building reports and getting data in the hands of end users? Yes. So we still had some work to do there. For a BI tools perspective, we were using a lot of Excel. I'm sure many of you guys have been at organizations in this stage. It's a pretty normal spot to start. But we were also beginning to utilize Tableau and see the power that we could have with using Tableau. And a couple of our key business areas, namely our sport performance team, which makes sense, were ahead of the game with data usage, and they were using R to begin building their predictive models. So, outside a couple key areas though, what does data look like? It's still something most people were afraid of. They didn't know how it could help them, how they could really utilize this data. And so we have our lovely data consulting team here, depicted by Maggie's great doodle. And they were really acting as data evangelists. We were going out to all of the different business areas, trying to say how we can help you, how data can help them. This ranged from things like building simple data summaries, to just getting access to the data to the right people, to fully automating some of the processes. The good news? It worked. We started having all these different areas that were utilizing our data consulting services, being like, wow, you did ABC, but now can you do D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P? And we're like, yes, however, there's still 4 of us trying to do this. And not only were these different areas coming to us with more and more requests, other business area units were seeing what we were doing and also starting to come to us. So all of a sudden, we had this very quick and rapid adoption and desire for data. But there were still 4 of us. So we ended up in this churn process, right? We're getting the requests, we're trying to fulfill them and get them back out. We're just doing the best we can. We don't want to say no to anybody. They're now wanting to utilize data. That's what we were trying to do. That was our goal. How can we turn them away? But what that ended up with is us doing all of these requests without a strategy or thought about how we were going about it. And it led us to move from that manual reporting, we're moving up, but into this dashboard overload phase.
And cue Maggie starting at the organization. I joined the USOPC right smack dab in the middle of their dashboard overload phase. And I kid you not, there were over 1,000 of dashboards published to our server. It was quite a lot. But I want to take a step back and recognize that while dashboard overload might have a bit of a negative connotation, it's actually something to be celebrated, right? It is showing growth, it is showing maturity in your data. So while it might be a bit overwhelming to have, remember, you're moving up, so celebrate it. And when you're done celebrating, like when we were done celebrating, we realized, okay, now we need to think about having a little bit more governance, a little bit more strategy around how we put these dashboards out and around our reporting. In addition to, we needed a new approach to how to set up our analysts to support data usage across the organization.
So we finally took a breath, we took a pause, and we took a much needed step back, and we evaluated how our data ecosystem was set up and structured. We did a full evaluation here. We did a data maturity exercise to see where each of the different departments were at. We evaluated and researched all of the different type models that we could consider going down the path for. And then, of course, we had to think about the money side and do some gap analysis as well. We decided to move to a hybrid model, also known as a hub and spoke model. And in this model, you have a data center of excellence, normally with your IT and a data hub team, that is setting up and supporting functional expert analysts across the organization that are embedded in the different departments. So what do each of these different categories do? Not surprising, and IT does classic IT functions, right? They're still doing their data architecture, their systems, their tables, security, everything along those lines. But then you have a data hub team, and that is the team that's integrating the business and the technology side of the organization. They're the ones that are creating standardization, actual putting strategy behind how we're using the data, not just going out and using it. And they're driving enterprise level initiatives. So those projects that are going across lots of different areas of the business. Lastly, but most importantly, you have your functional expert teams. They could be a singular analyst. They could be a whole team of analysts, depending on the need of that area of the business. They're the teams that are really finding those insights and driving the data storytelling. They're the ones that know the data in the different business areas, right? They're the best equipped people to be doing that data storytelling. So establishing this model really allowed us to take that much needed step back as an organization and think through a strategy. We wanted to ensure that we were being forward thinking and actually aligning on goals, not just saying, we're gonna become data informed. How are we gonna become data informed? What are we gonna do? What process are we gonna set up to actually achieve that goal? So we created an entire enterprise data strategy. This was done in conjunction between our data hub and our IT teams. And so you can see here, there are two at the top goals that are in blue. Those are a lot more data hub focused goals, whereas the two goals in red at the bottom are more IT focused goals. Maggie and I here are part of our data hub. So today we're going to hone in on cultivating a data culture at the USOPC.
All right, before diving into how we cultivated this data culture, let's go ahead and define it. I took this screenshot directly from Tableau's website because I think they did a really good job of capturing what we wanted to do with our data culture. You can read the highlighted parts there, but in sum, what we wanted to do is we wanted to have data so woven into the behavior of our organization that people thought of it as a forethought, not an afterthought. So instead of saying, oh, I didn't realize we had data on that, they say, oh, how can I use data to inform this decision, to inform this process, et cetera. Tableau has 3 different buckets they use here to kind of describe certain data culture behavior, but where we're gonna focus in on today is encourage sharing and community, because that is what we did. We built out a data community. It's a lot going on in this slide, but I'm gonna start from the top. First of all, how did we create this community? What did we do? We didn't do all of these things all at once. We started with a Teams channel. Do y'all use Teams mostly? Show of hands, a lot of people. Okay, sweet, so y'all are familiar. We started a Teams channel, and in this channel, the intent that we had was to collaborate, to centralize, and to connect data people and data things across the organization. Because at the time, there really wasn't a one-stop shop for us to go in and understand what system do we have, what databases do we have, what tables. It just wasn't really, it was kind of like person by person knowledge. There wasn't a place, a resource where people could go and look. So that was one intent of the channel. We also wanted it to operate kind of like an open forum. So as you see online when you're maybe researching a coding or programming question, where people can go in and they can ask, hey, I'm looking to do this analysis. Where can I find data on X? We have content experts from across the organization being able to chime in saying, hey, this might be a good table for you. Similarly, any questions that people might have with Excel or Tableau, I'm struggling with this. Has anybody encountered this before? So instead of receiving these individual messages that Jessica and myself would get throughout our day, there's now a place where people can post it and different members of our data community can chime in and can help and really create this collaborative environment. Now, did this vision come to fruition in totality? No, it did not. It took a little bit of time for people to really engage in the community, and it's something we're still working on to kind of encourage people to step up, ask those questions, and answer those questions. But all good things take time, so we'll get there, and we are seeing notable progress. Next up, training sessions. Before we rolled out any training sessions, we surveyed our audience, our core membership of this Teams channel, asking what would be useful, what would be valuable to them. And within that, we've gained valuable insight that Excel is not going anywhere and people want to learn more about it because it's their primary tool. So we accommodated that. We decided that's a good thing for us to have a training session on. And so we rolled out 3 different types of training sessions, Excel being one of them, Tableau being another, and a third being a Tableau tips and tricks and show and tell, which I lovingly deem Tableau trick and treat. These training sessions were offered and alternated between each of those 3 every 3 weeks, which has actually ended up being very useful for us because one person would kind of take ownership of the trainings, and so we'd have about 9 weeks in between the point where we needed to create content. So it definitely alleviated some pressure and gave us time to refresh and not get burnt out. At this point, you're probably wondering and or salivating over these delicious looking pies on the screen. These pies were, as you might expect, a celebration of Pi Day, March 14th. We, recognize that in order to continue to build an environment and a culture, we needed to have those opportunities for fun and for connection. So definitely never forget that part to really bring people together. I'm proud to say that the fruit pie you see that has the pie emblem was my own creation.
And in case y'all were wondering, the very obvious store-bought apple pie on the left, yeah, that's what I brought.
Yeah, Jess and I had different approaches. Practical, I spent hours peeling a kiwi to put on a pie. But it was a really fun day. We also rolled out office hours. We roll these out weekly at variable times throughout the week so we can capture different people's schedule. And they operate as you would expect. We mimic the college campus type of professor office hours where people can come by at any point during the meeting and bring their data questions. And we're there to offer one-on-one support and problem solve, troubleshoot with them. This was great because it helped people have their data aha moments, but it also exposed us to how people were using data across the organization. So it really was a mutually beneficial initiative. We also ambitiously rolled out newsletters. These newsletters contained anything from IT updates to a fun comic at the bottom. We had tips and tricks. We had a dashboard highlight. They're really robust and really beautiful newsletter. And there will be more to come on that later. And underpinning all of this was Tableau server cleanup. You heard me talk about our dashboard overload phase, so we needed to do something about that. And we started an initiative to clean up stale content. We established criteria for what we defined as stale, and we reached out to those owners of those dashboards and asked them to please archive. This was great, and we saw really good progress in our server space usage increase, or the space side of the server increase. And we also created a more user-friendly environment, so when people are going in and looking through our server, they're not overwhelmed with hundreds of reports all talking about athlete demographics. So how did these initiatives pan out? Well, I'll go through a couple success points here and save some of the learnings for later. But first and foremost, we saw our Teams channel growth explode, right? We went from 25 core members to over 120 members, and a lot of this was just due by word of mouth. People were excited about what we were sharing, and we're talking about it across the org, so they wanted to join in. And I think the way that we geared our trainings allowed it to be a really inclusive environment, so you didn't have to be a data person. You could gain insight from really any of these sessions, probably more so the Excel side for those who didn't work with Tableau, but really that inclusive and kind of just fun environment. Who doesn't want pies, you know? We had 100% of our departments engaged in this Teams channel, so not 100% of the organization, but at least a few people from every single area of our business were a part of this channel, and not only were they a member of this channel, but we also saw 100% of them attend our training sessions. So again, not 100% of everyone, but people from all over the organization were attending our training sessions, which was really exciting to see. Speaking of our training sessions, so far we have hosted over 20 sessions covering more than 70 topics. Our average attendance is about 15 per session, and our average attendance at office hours is about 2 to 3, which is actually quite nice, so we have that one-on-one time and don't feel like we have to scramble. Pictured here on your right is a clip from our data community health dashboard where we keep tabs on how our data community is doing. We keep track of all of the departments that have shown up, how engaged they are. We have our Teams channel metrics, such as post interactions or posts in general, active users. We have data community session metrics, how many people showed up, what departments were represented. This is really important and informed a lot of our learnings down the line. What's not pictured here is we also have a section of this dashboard that is our Tableau server health, and that kind of monitors that stale content and how we're doing to decrease the dashboard overload we see on our server. And lastly, we have a member testimonial from one of our data community champions. This is Andrea from finance. I won't read it word for word, but What she really gained out of our community is had people to use as a sounding board. She had a resource for expanding her own skills, and Andrea has really come a long way in the Tableau space, and it's been very exciting to see. And she can also have an opportunity to educate others on the data that she works with, which is our finance data. So we really love this testimonial because it kind of describes exactly what we wanted people to get out of this data community. All right, we are not done there. We are ambitious people, and we already have a second wave of initiatives that are in motion, one of which being our data onboarding and data offboarding process. Our data onboarding process, whenever we add somebody to the data community, Jess and I have a process where we send them an email, a canned email, but it still seems authentic, where we outline what our community offers, and just gives them a point of connection to us. If we notice that the person being added to our data community is a very heavy data role, like a data scientist, let's say, we schedule a 30-minute one-on-one call with them just to give them, again, that point of connection, some FaceTime, realize we're not scary and we're here to help them. In that meeting, we also go over a high-level overview of our systems, of our databases, and of our tables, so they kind of get an understanding of the whole picture instead of their potentially siloed work. Our data offboarding process isn't in full swing yet, but what our intent here is that when a data person leaves the organization, we want to make sure we have a process to capture their knowledge and capture their work and transfer it before it all gets lost. This will ensure kind of continuity of that work that we don't want to lose.
And so we also started to realize that we were going to need some data hiring best practices. Coming back to that shift from a 4-person data consulting team to a hybrid model, we knew there was a lot of data hiring on the horizon for the organization. And not only that, it was going to be a lot of departments that hadn't hired a data person before, right? They've never had that role exist, and they were probably non-technical people that were going to be hiring these data roles. So we worked with all the different areas. We consolidated data projects that had existed thus far from those processes that had been done. And we offered a service to help them with their data hiring projects, processes, panels, etc. And so it's important to note that not every business area was going to need the same type analyst. Our sport performance team was going to need an engineer, they were going to need a data scientist, they were super modeling heavy. Some of our other departments, they're looking more for a reporting analyst and a process efficiency type analyst. Very different skills that they were going to want to target. So we would work with the different departments, figure out the skills that they truly needed and were going to target, help them build out a data project, different data panel questions and things like that, and work together so that we could get the best people in the door. Not only did we do that, we also built out a resume database. It was a simple Excel file, but linking to everyone's LinkedIns and their resumes so that we could be good and consistent at sharing great candidates across the different areas of our org, especially knowing that while this candidate might not be right for this business area, we could see them being perfect over in our sports med business area. Furthermore, data wizards. Maggie fondly named this group. Not surprising, she's the creative one here. But we recognized a need as that community grew to 120 plus members to have a subset of that community that was our data leaders of the organization. So we launched this Data Wizards group, and the goal of this group was to come together quarterly and talk about the different initiatives that were happening all across the organization. We didn't want any initiatives happening in silos. We wanted to make sure we were learning from the different initiatives happening across, as well as building those connection points that might have been missed otherwise. So then, lastly, for me here, is our data literacy program. This is one we're super excited to roll out in the next few months. This program is really a training, educational program. We're trying not to call it a training though, so it doesn't come off negative. And it is going to be a 1-hour training where we are covering the base level foundation of data literacy. It's like things as simple as please start your Excel in A1 and not F5. All the way to how do you ask good questions? How do you get used to working with data and know what to ask? Right now, the plan is to roll this out to the entire organization for those that are interested in it and want to upskill. The goal for us, though, is in the future that this is built in and a part of our company's onboarding. Every new person that is hired will have to take this 1-hour training as a part of their onboarding week.
And lastly, Tableau server standards. We wanted to roll out resources to help have a more consistent look and feel of dashboards on our server. So things such as USOPC branding, accessibility, and more minute things such as optimizing your workbook to perform at its best capability. Okay, learnings along the way. First and foremost, as you all probably know, listen to your audience. As I mentioned previously, when we went through the training or the Teams channel, we surveyed our core membership before we decided what trainings to roll out. And this informed us, again, as I mentioned, that Excel was a top priority for a lot of our data folks in the organization. We also started small. There's so much tendency and sometimes pressure to want to over-engineer something to perform and to prescribe exactly how you think it should operate. We had to hold ourselves back a few times just so we could let it happen naturally, observe, and let that inform the changes that we needed to make. Identify community champions. Honestly, this data community would not be where it is today if it wasn't for our community champions. These are the folks in different departments who didn't work directly with our hub, who promoted the club out, who supported us, who asked questions and gave valuable feedback. These guys were really the all-stars of this community. Track engagement. We're all data folks here. We sure understand how important metrics are to inform decision-making. As you heard me mention earlier, we had a newsletter that we rolled out, which was really a good idea. We thought it was a great idea, but it took a lot of coordination and a lot of hands on deck to put it together and to push it out monthly. And what we saw in the data when we were tracking these engagement metrics was that nobody was really looking at it, maybe our team and one other person. So at this point, we decided to make kind of the smart choice and reinvest our time into something else and not keep pushing something that wasn't working, at least for the time being. So tracking engagement is it's so important in general, just to understand if what you're doing is actually working. Lastly, maintain resources. We are very, very intentional and good at keeping up with our resources and keeping them consistent. For example, after every session, we put the session into what we call a session directory, which is nothing complicated. It's an area where we have the date, who presented, the session type, topics covered, and all relevant links to meeting recordings, to the presentation, to any relevant workbooks or data sets we used throughout that session. And this is a great way, in case somebody missed a session or gets onboarded later, they're able to look through that session directory and maybe see a topic that interests them and rewatch and engage with our content. So it's something that continues on. It exists beyond that one training session. And it's been really valuable for people to go back and rewatch or just watch for the first time too. And keeping consistency with that is really important so our members know what to expect and when to expect it. And we've learned a lot along the way, and we still have some more learning to do. But we believe that what we've done so far has really driven a shift in our data culture at the USOPC that we're very proud of.
So now to bring us full circle, how has this shift impacted our data ecosystem? Well, we still have a lot of data. In fact, we actually added another database. So in this past, honestly, couple months, we added a fan database. So now we are up to 8 main source systems. What has changed, however, is all of these source systems are now flowing into a Snowflake data warehouse. We are actually still working on building out. Unfortunately, with Bob's retirement, we also retired the Bob schema. And so we are working on building out a star schema and getting all of this data now connected into a great data warehouse for all analysts to utilize. Our tools are mainly the same. However, the percentage of how they're being utilized has drastically changed. Yes, we still have Excel usage. I honestly think we always will. I think most companies probably always will. but it's a lot smaller percentage utilizing Excel now, especially when you're thinking about actually doing analysis and business intelligence work. In Excel, that's not really what you're seeing. We have moved and are very much harnessing the power of Tableau for all of our reporting. We have consolidated almost all of our data analysis and reporting into Tableau, and we have seen the number of publishers drastically increase. So that has been amazing to watch as a lot more new people are learning how to build it out in Tableau and put it onto our server. But we have also seen a vast majority of our actual 400 plus employees at the USOPC now utilize and are signing into Tableau. That's a bigger win than anything we could imagine. We are still using R as well as Python now for all of our predictive modeling and true data analysis. A lot of times what we do though is we take those outputs and still put them into a Tableau report, as that's where our end users are used to going to gather and digest that info. So along with Bob's retirement of the Bob schema, we also retired Maggie's doodle of the data consulting team. We are a fully operational hybrid model now. We have gone from 7 analysts total 5 years ago to over 25 analysts across the organization in a very short amount of time. And not only does every area now have data, have the ability to access and utilize the data, they want to. They want to know how to use this data better. They want to know how to make their lives better, how to answer questions using data. At the USOPC, we really are at an all-time high for appetite for data, and we think that is truly because of our data culture initiatives. So, in closing, with a stronger and healthier data culture, we have now moved as an organization from reporting dashboard overload phase to starting to get to that stage 3, how we're using data to tell a story to inform decisions. Do we still have a lot of work to do? Yes, absolutely. Do we always probably have a lot of work to do as data people? Yes, absolutely. But we believe that the strengthening of our data culture has paved the way for all of our other goals and objectives within our data strategy. So we encourage everyone here, as you think about your organization's data strategy, make sure you're thinking about and considering your data culture. Because we believe that having a thriving data culture isn't just a component of success, we believe it sets the foundation upon which all other objectives stand. Thank you all so much. We hope you enjoyed our presentation, and we will now open it up for questions for about 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir. Question in the front.
So awesome presentation. Good overview of the journey that you went on. I like the part about the Bob, the person that had that.
Yeah, they're great.
I'm just curious. So if you'll indulge me in what you can share, how did you choose Snowflake for that replacement? Because I know there's things like Databricks, other things. I've used all the flavors of them in some of my previous roles. How did you settle on Databricks, and was there a differentiating factor?
I'm going to be honest. Okay. Our IT team decided without us.
Yeah. Not involved.
we were told that was the move that was being made.
Okay.
So.
All right.
I like the part that you guys were talking about where you were saying you did the training sessions, you guys had office hours and things like that. I think that's really important when you're looking like ad hoc and self-service. I'm wondering if you guys came in contact with like trying to get stakeholders or even analysts. Like you said, you had a small team. How do you get the buy-in, or did you guys have to overcome saying like we're going to stop on the dashboard overload, actually like the work production, and invest more in the resources? How do you guys overcome that?
That's why we started very small with only the 3 weeks per session, every session, because we couldn't put a ton of resources towards building out those training sessions all at once. So what we did was we said, we need 2 to 3 hours once every 2 to 3 months of these 3 people. That was a lot easier to sell, 2 to 3 hours of someone's time every couple months, than, hey, we're going to pause and we're going to build out all of these training sessions and we're going to get them rolled out in the next month or two. That would take a lot more work. So by trying to chunk it down, be very small amounts, that's how we were able to sell it. Because yeah, we couldn't devote half of an analyst even to building that out for months. We had to really segment and keep it small, and that took a lot longer. So we started building these sessions a year plus ago, and we are just now finalizing our Tableau and Excel sessions with the goal of now during the games time, when a lot of us will be on the ground supporting in Paris, if you're supporting the Olympic Games, during the Paralympic Games, we're having an analyst that's normally a pretty down time when they're at the games and we're home, re-record all the sessions more as forward-facing training sessions, and then partnering with our HR group to get them up on our learning platform. But it took a lot longer to get here than, if we tried to roll it out all at once, but that's just the only way we could get the resources to do it.
I'll add one thing on that and a bit of the buy-in, and maybe this is personal bias, but I find that making it fun engages a lot more people. So as I mentioned, one of the training sessions is called Tableau Trick and Treat. Like, who doesn't want to go to a session called Trick and Treat, in my opinion? So finding those ways to incorporate fun, I think, really helps get that interest and buy-in across the organization. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
So you guys had you talked about how you had a lot of people asking for dashboards, and you were kind of rolling them out very quickly. And I understand you want to maintain that enthusiasm, but you also want to produce good work. How do you kind of maintain that balance?
We struggled. We honestly were overworking we had a lot of analysts overworking at that point, trying to maintain the balance that wasn't possible with the workload that was coming in. That's why it was really important that we took the pause when we did and say, hold on, this is not healthy. We cannot keep up with this. We had a lot of people that were maybe perfectionists a little bit, and were not willing to put out bad quality work. But that meant that they were working the extra hours to make it the quality they wanted to give out, and we just didn't want that as an organization culture-wise. So we had to take that pause because, yeah, we struggled a lot with that.
How do you communicate that to your customers to maintain that enthusiasm on their part? So they still want those things developed, even knowing that, like, hey, I'm not going to get it as quickly. So you keep that excitement for it and get the level of quality that you want to deliver.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's when we had to communicate the shift in the data ecosystem model to explain to them why we couldn't keep up with it. We didn't want to lose them. We didn't want to lose the excitement. But we had built great relationships with most of our business area owners, the ones wanting them. And so we were honest and transparent. There's 4 of us. We are doing the best we can. We're actually evaluating and talking to leadership right now about how we can change this model to better support you and meet your needs. For the time being, though, and we would just communicate deadlines, too. We'd be very transparent about, do you actually need this tomorrow? I don't think you do. How about 2 weeks from now? And so we'd kind of push them a little bit to question why there was this urge to have it right away.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. I think we're almost at time in case maybe one more, but if not, all right. Great, or wait, was there time for one more? Yes. Okay, great, yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask, like, you're probably gonna be growing like your audience, right, in the future. So do you have like any steps or like you're taking preventive actions, like expecting the audience, your customers, to like be a larger group in the future, right? So like if more businesses are gonna come to you, do you have like some rules or like just practices that you can already introduce now so that it's gonna be easier in the future?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so I think that we are at a point where all of our departments, so at the USOPC, we don't really have like businesses coming to us. It's kind of a different setup. We're at a point now where we have set up every department that's utilizing data to be utilizing it. We have a couple like safeguards, I guess, in place of where we think data could grow and making a plan for that. But it's not new businesses coming to us, if that make sense at all. Okay. And so we are trying to put a lot more guardrails on how data is used. So things like, I don't know how you guys currently connect, but a lot of our dashboards are connections into our old SQL server, switching over to Snowflake, and they're individual connections in. So when they're published to Tableau, they're individual data source published, and we have the same data source up there 15 times. And so we're trying to set the foundation so that as the new data users, new use cases come on board at the org, the foundation is set. Here are the 10 data sources that you connect to on Tableau. They're published data sources. You're building off of it. We have guardrails in place for the reports and how you can report and when they get archived. So our team's more focused on kind of the usage of the data, what guardrails can we put in so that as it continues to grow, we don't go back to stage 2.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I appreciate your time.